r/AskReddit asks. Serious, how anxious do you feel about the coronavirus? I'm only worried for people like my dad who have a compromised immune system and prior health issues. My 11-year-old has a genetic condition with the side effect of a weak immune system. On top of that, he hates to wash his hands and loves to put them in his mouth. I am in Illinois and a little worried. The virus itself? Not too worried. The disruptions and panic it'll cause? More worried. The disruption of supply lines has the potential to cause more loss of life than the virus itself. That's a very good way of putting it. Whenever I see the coronavirus in the news, I don't feel a sense of impending doom, but I do worry about the effects it has beyond infecting people. About 25% not for myself though, but for elderly family members and general public reactions. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could tank the virus as a 26-year-old healthy dude. It would suck donkey balls catching it, but I like my odds. My 94-year-old grandma though? Not so sure about that. Realistically, I know there isn't much threat where I am, but since my parents are older I can help but worry a bit. Same here. I'm in my early 20s and don't have any issues with my immune system or anything that I know of, so I'd probably be able to get over it. But both my parents are both over 50, and I'm concerned that if I were to get it I could spread it to them and they might not fare as well. I'm in the Midwest, half an hour from a domestic airport. I feel security in being sufficiently isolated from other parts of the globe. Is half an hour from the airport a long distance where you come from? Almost nobody here lives that close to an airport. Geneticists hear this virus has the ability to become a pandemic. It is possible for us to get it under control, but due to the long incubation period and the fact that a significant /14% of those infected don't show any symptoms, it is easily spread from person to person. However, if reporting is accurate, there is a higher recovery rate from this virus than there was from the SARS virus. Not extremely? Maybe that's due to a lack of knowledge on what the disease actually does. According to the CDC, the primary symptoms are fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Based on that, most adults with an uncompromised immune system should be okay. I am, however, very worried about children and immunocompromised people. Children are not being affected, according to all reports I've heard. Only worried because I live in the most populous city in the US, very surprised that there haven't been any confirmed cases here yet. Fingers crossed. It just hit my country and we're closing schools and stuff now, so I'd say a little anxious, yay. I live in Japan. It's amazing how much more real it seems to feel in countries going through school closures and actual pandemic measures. I hope you and yours are all safe. If you asked me yesterday before 10 p.m., I would have said not anxious at all. My husband came home last night from picking up one of his elderly clients from the airport. He told me that the airline would not allow passengers to get off the plane until they escorted a passenger that had barricaded themselves in the plane's restroom for the majority of the flight. It turns out that passenger was infected with the coronavirus. So this elderly client was possibly exposed to the coronavirus during her flight, which means my husband was exposed, which means now I've been exposed as well as our 3-year-old daughter. I honestly am freaking out and don't know what to do. Getting pretty anxious. There's an outbreak in my home country where my family live. They also found a case where I live that wasn't directly related to people traveling from China, so it's starting to spread here too. Every time I get in my car, I could die and never return. I am not stressing about a disease. Not because I just choose not to, but physically cannot dwell on it. Anything can kill us. Exactly. The most dangerous thing we do every workday is drive to work. Why isn't the number of people dying in the roads causing panic? I am a little concerned. I don't think it would kill me, but I have a neuromuscular syndrome that gets a lot more painful for a few weeks after respiratory infections. So I would really like to avoid catching it. I keep going back and forth with it. I'm leaving for Japan on Sunday, and 12 hours of the day I know I'll be fine, and the other 12 I'm texting my family telling them I love them. I just had friends get home from an anniversary trip to Japan. They said there were a lot of people wearing masks, not uncommon in Japan overall, but they didn't ever feel like they were wandering through a plague zone. They wash their hands a lot and wore masks in public to be safe, but they are fine. Living in Thailand. We had 4 international trips that just got cancelled. Things were pretty good until we just had a breakout in my province this week and very close to my kids' school. They're off tomorrow as the school cleans everything as a precaution. It's not the virus so much that scares me, it's the potential for death of old/young people in my family and also social stigma and other financial impacts. A lot. My little brother has a disease that makes him have low immunity and he had a lot of respiratory diseases in the past, so I'm afraid I get it and pass to him somehow. Yesterday was confirmed the first case here in Brazil and I live in Rio, so there are people from all over the world arriving every day. If it's been this long and there's only one confirmed case, that's probably a good sign. The best way to keep safe at the moment is just washing hands often, which doesn't sound like much but it is very helpful in preventing spreading illnesses and things. Try not to worry too much. I'm not worried about the virus, I'm worried by everyone else worrying about it. People tend to panic and that always leads to problems. Not too worried about it until Trump's news conference yesterday. Mike Pence in charge of this does not really put me at ease. The man bungled his state's response to an HIV outbreak by ignoring health professionals. I don't expect him to do a good job with the whole fucking country. Plus, with the CDC's pandemic response team having been fired a few years back and their budget cuts. Not too worried about it infecting me. I don't think Canada will have to worry about it. But I am worried for what it can cause in other places in the world that may or may not affect Canada indirectly. I'm pregnant, and will be for a good while, so I'm trying really hard not to think about it. Confused face, also really not happy that I'll have to take 3 plane trips before my due date. Perhaps you shouldn't take those plane trips. Not really, the lethal rate isn't high, and I am 30 years old, so my chance of dying is really low. 2 things about the current mortality rate. 1, is as you've said, it's probably lower as it's only being based on confirmed cases, and there's likely significantly more unconfirmed cases where those infected only experience very mild symptoms, similar to a cold, and then completely recover. 2nd, is that the mortality rate in China might be uniquely high due to COVID-19 being a respiratory disease, and a greater portion of the Chinese population may have pre-existing respiratory problems due to pollution and the country's high per capita rate of smokers. I spent $230 on food yesterday. Hopefully it's canned food, and lots of water. Doesn't look like you need to worry about entertainment though. More today than I was yesterday. There was another scare in our country today and there is much more news coverage about it now. While the news provides necessary information, it also seems to spread panic much faster. I'm from Slovenia and while there are no cases in our country yet, so not too much, but we gave 4 neighbor countries. Croatia does have cases, Italy, many hotspots near our border, Austria also does have cases, and another country, don't know English name but it almost doesn't count because it's only 5 to 10% of our border. I'm optimistic, but the thing that worries me the most is that our doctors said that they have no idea what to do if they meet someone with it. I'll have to wait, but panic begins when we will have our first case. Then I'll try not to go out when possible. Worried about getting the virus itself? Not too much. I'm young and healthy, so even if I do get COVID-19 I'll be fine. I'm worried about the long-term problems like the economy and how much Eastern Asian people may be discriminated against. I'm also worried about how the outbreak is going to affect my education since I go to an international school in China and my school has been closed since CNY, and the opening time is now undefined. I'd say my worries on a scale of 1 to 10 is about an 8, but that's probably because it ties to my own life so closely. Not the virus itself but the shortages it will cause. My wife and I work at 2 different companies and both companies have enough stock to last for about 2 more weeks. Then production stops. Can't afford to go without pay. Starting to freak out a bit, to be honest. I'm not really worried for myself, pretty sure my immune system could kick it, though of course it would really suck. I'm a little concerned about my friend's 1-month-old baby. If COVID-19 starts spreading around here, they're going to have to completely quarantine that house to protect him. The virus? Not at all. Its effects on my portfolio? Extremely. I have no retirement, I'm barely getting by without racking up mountains of debt, and a 30% loss in 5 days is absolutely ridiculous. I really don't want to exit any positions at a loss, so I guess I'm just going to wait it out, but holy shit, this hurts. Hold fast in your positions and keep faith. The markets have always bounced back, and if they don't, well, your portfolio will be the least of your worries. This is when the rich get richer. It's inevitable that the market will bounce back. If you have the money, buy the dip and weather the storm. This is a real test of the planet's ability to hold back a virus that can spread like this. If the mortality rate was much higher, we would be so screwed. This is a severe wake-up call to have real planning in place. As someone who works in healthcare, moderately worried. This thing seems to be fairly contagious, and people don't seem to grasp what a 2% fatality rate, okay, let's say it's even way lower, 1%, would actually look like if this becomes widespread. While we are nowhere near there yet, this seems to have the potential to be the worst communicable disease outbreak we've seen in a long time, maybe excluding HIV. That said, we aren't there yet, and I don't think the current situation requires people to change their current routines, outside of restricting travel to hotspot areas. The mortality rate is only 2%. Which is not that scary to me. It's not Ebola. The issue is more that sick people will overburden the healthcare system and economic growth will take a hit as businesses shut down and people stay home. That's why the stock market is plunging. It's looking out 6 months from now when company profits take a hit. To me, it's an economically scary thing. The 2% figure is also likely inflated as it's only among confirmed cases. There are likely many people out there who have the coronavirus but don't feel sick enough to get tested or to think it's anything other than a cold. It does not cause severe disease in the majority of cases, especially in otherwise healthy adults. It's very likely that the true mortality rate is far lower than 2%. A little. 1. About my work. As preparing exhibits for marketing. Many of my projects are postponed or cancelled. My boss is now considering close for several weeks. So I'm concerned about my paychecks. 2. I'm relatively young, so I think I'll be just fine even if I caught virus. But what if there'd be not enough facilities for treatment, if I got it? This is happening in China, I believe. That's why people keep dying. Even the amount/percentage looked not that serious, but people are actually dying with those reasons. I guess a little worried just because I don't know how bad the virus or the panic will get. I booked a flight to Greece in May for my honeymoon, and I just saw an article that said Greece confirmed its first case of the virus. I'm a bit of a planner, but I'm not sure if I should cancel or wait and see. Lol, I mean. Don't cancel now. If in 2 months there are thousands of cases, flights will be cancelled anyways,